Hi, Parag. Hi, Vasundhara.
Hi,
A
hi.
warm hi, a warm welcome to all the audience here. It's amazing to be a part of this audience. Interested in knowing what is the latest in technology, and of course, as we've been discussing for the past 1 hour, we see that generative AI is really, caught the attention and has been the highlight of possibly every tech conversation that we are having these days, right? It's suddenly been in the spotlight, and as a company who is very closely working on innovation and making sure that we bring on the latest from the technology world, from the deep tech world onto the table for our clients and for our portfolio companies, we definitely thought that this would be a very interesting conversation to have, right? So thanks Parag for joining me. Thanks for Sundara again for joining, and thanks to the audience for joining us today. The thought process that we are today here, we're going to have a discussion regarding the various business use cases that we've seen in our implementation through our portfolio companies, through our clients, and we're definitely going to discuss a lot of those exciting solutions that we bring onto the table and what are the possibilities that we see in today's AI world. So should we get started, Parag? Should we?
Yeah,
Does
all
that
set.
sound good? Right,
Yes.
great. So let me just quickly run you through. We reached out to. We have a community of well wishers and friends whom we call the Friends of Network Science. We reached out to this community, and there was a research which our market intelligence unit conducted. So I'm going to share a couple of slides which essentially talk about what are the domains, what are the industries, and what are the technologies that we've seen have the should I say the early adopter of generative AI. These are industries which have actually seen solutions backed by the entire the tools and technology of generative AI and have seen some amazing business benefits. So let me just quickly share my screen and showcase some of those use cases, some of those industries which are having running those use cases, and then maybe we can discuss and more about that. Yeah, just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Yes.
You can see a screen.
Lovely. So that's okay. So, like I was saying, essentially today we are going to be talking about what are the various business use cases that we have, and how generative AI is actually the so-called genie, which is fulfilling a few of the business use cases, which obviously, to a large extent, are about deeper interactions with their customers, with their multiple stakeholders, and of course, reducing the operational, the cost and the time, and making organizations much more effective. So, like I was saying, we reached out to the Friends of Network Science, and this is a research that we conducted with our startup portfolios, with our clients, and all the client engagements that we're currently doing. And if you look at it, we've basically mapped industries that we're talking about and the business capabilities within enterprises. So what we see here essentially is the various industries that are the early adopters of generative AI, and what are the business within those industries that we see are getting used the most. So this, if we notice, is one of the most dense use case sections or repertoire that we have, which is essentially the text generation, image generation, audio video generation, and improving the existing content. And this, of course, the most obvious usage for here would be the media and the professional services segment. When I say professional services, we are essentially seeing a lot of traction in services being provided, like the legal services, the NDA, contract management, service management. So these are all industries wherein there is a lot of document generation which happens. There's a lot of templates which need to be used, and while the base templates are pretty standard, there are variations and intelligent variation which needs to be done on the basis of the context of the particular case. And that's where essentially generative AI is being have brought about tremendous effort. A reduction in effort and turnaround time in the grunt work that is typically done at the beginning of the process. Again, like I said, within the industry capabilities, of course, marketing and sales again has been an early adopter of generative AI. We will subsequently, going ahead in the presentation, talk about what does that what is that generative AI is actually generating. So let's quickly go through it and see what are the various artifacts and what are the various aspects of generation that generative AI is actually doing. And in a brief, let's cover the other use cases also. Like we're seeing, there is a lot of synthetic data that is getting created, and it is being used across multiple industries and capabilities, like be it the IT department or be it the marketing and sales, or most important for product building and product development, the R&D teams. Said that, like I said earlier, what is the kind of data that generative AI is creating? We are talking about media content or content in general. We're talking about a lot of synthetic data that is getting created, and we're talking about things that are getting created using generative AI. So when we say content or media content, text, audio, videos that are getting created, right? At the same time, synthetic data. The When we are talking about synthetic data creation, synthetic data is nothing but data which is getting created using algorithms. This data mirrors real life data, and yet at the same time, it follows the patterns. It follows the basis on which the real data is involved, and yet at the same time is completely different and is completely synthetic. So that's the whole point of synthetic data. So for example, if there are certain algorithms which need to be trained, there are complexities that need to be brought into that particular data set. What do? We create synthetic data, because either, typically we see that real life data is not really up to the mark, not large enough, and not, or probably at sometimes not complex enough. And yes, lastly, like we said, and this synthetic data which we are talking about, we've seen large amount of implementation of this synthetic data creation in healthcare, medical imaging. So for example, radiology imaging, all of these images are actually, while we have certain set of data with us today, for us to train algorithms with more complex nuances, that's where we bring on, we bank on the synthetic data. Financial data, credit card data, spends, investment patterns. While there is a lot of historic data that we have in this industry, it's obviously risky to share it, right? And even if we have it, we do not have the volumes sometimes. That's where synthetic data comes into picture. Similarly, in the automotive, the autonomous vehicles, how do you replicate the situations? For example, when a Tesla is testing the autonomous, the driving of the vehicles, where does it get all its simulation from? That's where synthetic data comes in. Gaming and reality, of course, gaming, virtual gaming, you want to make sure that your gamings are trained in such a manner that they are taking care of all the scenarios, and we train against the opponents to make sure that the gaming, of course, the computer always wins. And in agriculture, some very interesting use cases that we've seen for synthetic data in agriculture implementation, wherein while drones are monitoring the actual crop, the crop health, there are certain situations which are not seen regularly but need to be trained, but the models need to be trained on. That's why we are having a lot of synthetic data being generated for the agricultural, from the agricultural use case perspective. When we talk about the things that are getting generated, of course, it sounds a little weird, right? When we talk about things that are getting created by generative AI, we can obviously understand virtual data being created, we can understand media content being created. But when we are talking about things, we're actually talking about the designing of things. Generative AI is playing a very, very important role in product design. It's cutting through the cycles of a new product development tremendously. There are, and some of the core industries which are immensely from this is, of course, your automobile parts, your aircraft engines, which are getting generated. These are, of course, high risk, high investment parts which need to be generated, which need to be designed. And of course, the cycle time for a design of a new part is always very, very long, where generative AI is helping us cut down on this. Materials, new molecule development. This is something that we've seen in computer chip generation. IBM generated a particular new model, a particular new molecule which it was using in chip designing, and it generated it 100 times faster using generative AI and the simulation power of generative AI. Drug discovery, of course, we all understand that, medical, again, the whole idea of using synthetic data, using predictive analysis, kind of cut shorts the entire trial time. and the whole trial, the period taken for a drug to be brought out into the market drastically. So having, I mean, this being the content creation being most important part, what are those key use cases that we've seen being implemented with our customers? Parag, I do know you are working with a lot of our manufacturing customers, and they are implementing some very interesting use cases using the content creation. Would you like to just talk about a few of them?
Yeah, thank you, Trupti. I mean, some great insights on what for generative AI across verticals. So thank you for that. Like you mentioned, I do work closely with the manufacturing space. And one of the most important aspects, irrespective of the technology that we use, is that the companies always look for efficiency in their operations or processes. And generative AI is a technology that could help them in the long run, right? So, a couple of really interesting use cases that we are working on currently for a large manufacturing organization, and this typically involves helping the engineers on the field with support. For example, if an engineer is out there troubleshooting or doing a maintenance activity, he usually reaches out to an expert for help. How do we actually empower the engineer on site to perform the activity himself? So we can use an OpenAI kind of a model, something similar to ChatGPT, whereas ChatGPT is more generic in nature and uses open web. This form of platform for the organization could be something that's purely restricted to the organization itself. So, for example, if you face a problem on the field, he can directly chat with the AI bot that's available. That's kind of becomes like a virtual assistant. And instead of reaching out to 10 people in an organization or reaching out to the large number of files that are available in a very unstructured manner, he can just simply type a simple question like like interacting with a colleague of his, and he can get answers straight away. Now imagine how efficient the whole services industry would be if you could solve problems in real time, and you're actually empowering the engineer or the technicians to perform the activity themselves. And that's something that we're working on, and will be a really great example for the other verticals as well.
Okay.
Also related to this,
Interesting.
we've
I
seen
think
organizations, especially in the
the way
manufacturing
perhaps,
space,
sorry.
develop learning
Mhm.
content. Yeah. Also, in the we've seen in the manufacturing space a lot of the times what happens is you create learning videos, a module that helps you understand a specific process. Okay, and traditionally what's been done is you create such videos, and you share these videos across multiple geos and people in an organization. Now imagine the time and effort that it takes to create such videos. And if you're a globally spread out operation center, then you'll have to create the same video in 10 to 15 languages. Now imagine an AI generative model that can actually translate these videos in real time. You do not have to sit and manually create these videos each and every time, and this automates your entire process. So we're adding a digital layer to it. A similar concept could be used for creating a process driven video as well, wherein some changes, like a process keeps evolving, you can create these models and it could be deployed across an organization irrespective of where the employees are. So these are some prominent examples that we're working on, and really I feel it's revolutionary in its own way.
Absolutely, absolutely, Parag. Thanks for sharing all of those in details. Just going back quickly to the earlier use case where we talk about the on-field, on-field support staff getting a lot of information being structured and very very specifically to the organization that they are dealing with. I think this is also right, like you rightly said, it's revolutionary in the way because one, the interface is chat like, right? It's
Correct.
like almost like typing out those questions on a WhatsApp chat with your and asking, hey, I'm working on this particular machine. What do you think is
Correct.
and this is the image right now. What do you think I should do to understand this better?
Correct.
So I
Absolutely.
think right. So I think that is the revolution that we're talking about is the chat GPT kind of solutions or Bard kind of solutions which are brought into the market. And yes, absolutely agreed. So that is one very interesting use case that we're seeing. And the second one about multilingual changing, creating synthetic videos or text and audios, and then customizing it for the that we're talking about. This kind of creates this kind of cuts down the literature creation, artifact creation to such a drastic level, right? I mean,
Correct.
I think that's an amazing point. Thanks for that. Vasundhara, I also know you keenly are following the financial world. There are some examples that we've earlier discussed about how generative AI and synthetic data very specifically is being used. Would you like to share a few of them?
Yes, actually, what you said, what Parag also said about synthetic data, it's game changing for a lot of industries, including the financial industry. I specifically want to talk about with Morgan Stanley and Wells Fargo, where they use these robo advisors in the back end to provide financial advice to their customers, and also to mitigate the biases that occur when they're trying to provide the advice to
Right.
their customers. And they're also using it for fraud detection. So of course there's pros and cons to it all, but so they're trying to get it to work needs and customized. So these two companies especially are working with generative AI to provide financial advice to their customers, and also they use synthetic data in the sense that they use
Right. Yeah.
visual to textual
So
representation.
they actually
And
kind of expanded their algorithm training data sets by using
yes,
synthetic data, right? I
yeah.
mean,
So like yeah, it's algorithm driven financial planning basically. So yeah.
absolutely. I think that's very interesting. In fact, we were talking to one of our clients who is in the investment banking space, and one of the very interesting aspects which came out of the conversation is like HNIs, who typically do have a one-to-one a customer relationship manager mapped to them, are more and more open to doing investment banking using robo assistants, because one, it is availability 24/7. Secondly, the kind of human touch and the hyper personalization that is bringing around the robo investors are bringing onto the, it's just mind blowing. And like you rightly mentioned, for companies like Morgan Stanley, where they're piloting this particular technology with a few of their client base, they are more than happy, and they want to roll it out to a much larger scale. So that kind of gives us an idea about how very sensitive areas like financial planning and investment planning, for that matter, all of this can be very aptly supported by the generative AI models. I mean, great.
And also enhancing their security at the same time.
Absolutely. And bringing a lot of ease in the conversations again. I think that kind of helps. Thank you. Thanks, Vasundhara, for that. Things, of course, I think we kind of spoke when we talk about, how the content creation of drugs and all that. I was recently reading up an article which spoke about, pulmonary fibers, which are there is a drug which is getting into, which has been designed using AI, generative AI and predictive, which kind of helps us design these which stop or slow down the growth of pulmonary fissures. So I mean, it's just amazing what medical science and what aircraft industry and automobile industry is doing with them. General Motors, a company like General Motors, is actually using generative AI to create parts which are much more 40% lighter than the existing, which kind of makes their automobiles faster, lighter, and more fuel efficient, right? So that's what we're talking about when we say that generative AI is actually helping us create things along with content as well as synthetic data. Great. Let me just quickly move ahead to a few other use cases that we've seen. Very interesting. I saw in the first slide, uh, the marketing intelligence that we got, wherein we are talking about content creation being one of the most dense cases. So, of course, we're talking about similarly, customer engagement is one area which is which is very beautifully integrated chat, the whole generative AI capabilities into their existing tools. So, we just, of course, Vasudha just spoke about how robo advisors are being used in the financial industry, insurance industry also, or any other consultative selling that we need to do, because we have a template, we have the solutions, and we have personas which are getting created, and chat and generative AI, the language learning models kind of weave all of this together. Hyper personalization, like we just spoke in the wellness and the beauty. We are currently working with one of our portfolio companies, wherein which kind of, with the help of algorithms, does a complete skin analysis, hair analysis, body analysis, and on the basis of that gives very, very, hyper personalized product recommendations, routine recommendations to meet the aspirations. Simple example being, I have a dry skin, so I kind of aspire to have a skin which is well hydrated and is, looks really good. So when I talk about that, I just have that to my advisor on the platform, and the platform will really, pull out and complete personalized product recommendation that I should go and buy, and what is the routine that I need to follow to make sure that I take good care of my skin. And as we all know, in the beauty and the wellness segment, hyper personalization is the way to go. That is the only way we can hold on to customers and, to stop the churn and the moving around of customers. Customer loyalty is all very, very closely linked to hyper personalization, and generative AI and predictive models are helping us do that. So this is one of the use cases that we've seen with one of our clients right now. We are pursuing that. A couple of other things, of course, customer support. I think we've all now got into a habit of picking up our phones and getting onto a chatbot to ask, hey, what about my order? Where is my order right now? What is happening? So on and so forth. And the instant and the accurate human-like responses that we're getting through these chatbots, I think it all just boils down to the fact that I do not have to ask questions in a templatized format anymore.
Correct.
I can just randomly question, and the chatbots, the AI enabled chatbots actually understand my question and respond to it in the most human like. I mean, there are times I think all of us have been wondering, am I talking to a human or am I talking to a bot, right?
Correct.
So that, yeah. In fact, Parag, the other day we were talking. There was one conversation which we had, which was actually an English conversation.
Correct.
Just
Correct.
to give a context, this conversation was a beautiful amalgamation of English with Hindi. We were left wondering whether this is a bot or this is a human which is talking to us at 12 o'clock at night. It was, I think,
The
that.
way it picked up nuances of the language, that's what
Right.
caused us to believe that we're actually talking to a human being. I think that's something that's
Absolutely.
evolving each and every day. I
Absolutely.
think we're using it almost on every application that we use, and it's kind of become a day-to-day activity for all of us.
Absolutely. And that's where, yeah, just to extend that, we are also seeing a lot of virtual assistants, a lot of shopping apps, a lot of, high-end luxury stores which are talking about, which are giving us actually that phygital kind of an experience, wherein we walk into a virtual store and yet you have a avatar talking to you, taking you through
Correct.
the entire shopping experience. And that's why we're talking. I mean, those again are becoming more and more nuanced. There are a lot of layers to it, and they're becoming very, 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 very contextual, is what I feel, and that's where generative AI is largely coming into picture. Of course, customized experiences, interactive engagements, the whole meta thing that we're looking at, right? Creating avatars, entering the meta, and then the whole experience that we get into the meta. Again, each of these experiences are very, very customized depending on what I want to see or what is my choice and what are my preferences, right? And we said, all of this boils down to hyper personalization, which is very, very feasible using generative AI algorithms. A quick look at the a few other generative AI similar AI usages and simulations. Like we're talking about risk assessment, disaster response training. Risk assessment is essentially, again, very, very closely these cases that we are seeing very closely used in the financial world. So when we talk about risk assessment, there are a lot of fraudulent documents which get submitted, a lot of fraudulent contracts which are getting done and executed, and that's where generative AI, because of its capabilities of having so many data points covered and at the speed at which it does, risk assessment is something that we are very clearly seeing a lot of usage of generative AI. Similarly, disaster response. And the more the simulations, the more the situations that we create, the more the responses that we learn from these situations, the better our disaster response training is. And that's where, again, a lot of synthetic data is coming into picture, a lot of predictive analysis is coming into picture, and that's where we see generative AI being largely very, very effectively used. Financial forecasting, like we just spoke, while we talked about giving advice, financial advice, insurance advice, service advice, to consulting advice to a lot of our financial forecasting is also being done using the previous data, the historical data. Based on the historical data, a lot of algorithms are being trained. Again, the synthetic data that we keep talking about is also playing a large role here. Of course, while we spoken about content, we've spoken about how stakeholders, or the main stakeholder, which is the client whom we are talking to, that is improving drastically using AI. There are a lot of repetitive automobile within our organizations. So the stakeholders within the organization can very, very effectively be serviced using generative AI. And just for an example, we've taken, we're talking about the human resource domain here, wherein we're talking about managing leaves, administrating benefits to the employees and to the associates, introducing new hires into the organization, tailored development. I mean, for example, managing leave, one of our partner solutions that we have, portfolio companies that we have in the market, which we've recently implemented, wherein I go onto my WhatsApp, open my chat, and I say, listen, I am feeling a little unwell today. That can actually, we have generated which have been implemented, which will take that as a trigger to create a leave request. So we immediately get a response saying that, okay, fine, please take care. I am going to mark this out as a leave for you. And on that basis, it goes on to go and mark leave into the company, into the employees' profile. So those are the kind of intuitive solutions that we're bringing to the market, and all of this is of course powered by generative AI and to a large extent NLP, which is reading the language return and understanding the sentiments of the language. Benefits, like we just spoke, it could be various triggers which will lead to benefits being rolled out to. Earlier, these triggers would have to be manually monitored, reports to be drawn out, and accordingly, these benefits would have to roll out. Now, all we have to do is these are all already a part of the algorithm, fed into the algorithm, and the algorithm keeps processing this 24/7, and the benefits will be seamlessly rolled out to the employees. Career development. I mean, based on what the company has called out, what are their career development paths, the documents that they've called out, the thought processes they have as a part of their literature. ChatGPT and all the other generative AI solutions can actually talk about what are the career development recommendations that we have depending on the skills or the interests that the employee is talking about. Similarly, there is, of course, learning is another very, very big area which has been tremendously embrace the generative AI technology when we talk about creating hyper personalized learning modules, the learning. We make sure that everybody's moving at the pace that the organization wants them to move. If they are not, then there is certain additional help that is required. All of that is being monitored using generative AI and, of course, machine learning algorithms. Having said that, while we've taken the example of the HR process, there are a lot of other manufacturing processes also that we're seeing which can be automated using generative AI. And I think a very, very, very interesting domain which generative AI has kind of disrupted, which Nikhil and Murli very clearly and very articulately covered in their discussion, which is about code generation. So we've of course seen a lot of disruption that generative AI has brought into coding. So while no code, low code platforms are being completely transformed using the help of, using generative AI, the regular code generation industry has been also kind of, nothing less than disrupted using generative AI. We now have lines and lines of code being generated with the basis of the prompts, and generative AI can take care of all the standards that are required to be thought about, all the automation that is required, and everything else that needs to be taken care of. So that's essentially the generative AI impact that we're talking about in the coding. And of course, I think the other ones are self-explanatory when I talk about code-to-code translation. Earlier, they used to have massive projects for platforms moving from one coding language to another. Here, we are talking about code-to-code translation being done within a matter of minutes with the help of generative AI and the algorithms that have been worked on that. Automation, documentation is something that we've always been worried about when it comes to code writing. Whether we've had technical writers who've gone sitting the entire code and then created documentation out of it. Here we are talking about automatically documenting every line of code which is being generated, and that kind of makes code generation, the quality of code generation really ups the quality in that sense. And of course, quality assurance. So what is the code is supposed to do, the simulation, and so on and so forth, right?
Just a question on that, Trupti, if I
Sure.
may.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. Correct.
all this looks really good, and the question that comes up in my mind is: does this require an overhaul of the existing IT infrastructure or the existing application? Does enhancing the existing applications work? How does it? How does the journey look?
Yes, of course. So to answer that, I think I do have something which we are anyways talking about to a lot of our existing customers. While generative AI, as like we said, it is nothing short of transformation effect on every area that it is touching, and especially the more denser use cases that we're seeing in content creation, process automation, generation of newer content and more creative. What we're saying is no, you don't really need to scrap off or throw away everything that you currently have. Take, for example, chatbots. We have a lot of enterprises which have begun the journey of chatbots and customer interaction, client interactions. We can take a look at those platforms and make and advise based on the architecture, on the technology used, and what are the possibilities, how open these existing platforms are to API integrations and so on. We can definitely make the existing platforms much more intuitive, intelligent by adding the digital layers that we're talking about.
Right. Right.
So yeah, to answer that, I think a little more succinctly, no, I don't think we have to do away with all the existing platforms. We can definitely look at the existing platforms with by adding the chat GPT or the generative AI kind of capabilities into them.
Great. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Trupti, if I can just backtrack a bit.
Yes, yes.
So you talked about like wellness and HR and everything, right? So I feel like a big part of HR is employee well-being, and just along those lines, I want to discuss a use case here. It's this company called Vitality, which is an investment management. Basically.
Okay.
They ran a pilot study on. Okay, I'm excited about this. So they ran a pilot study on like 60,000 of their employees, and they what they did is they did a screening of before and after. They were using a mental health app to basically figure out what their problems are, and they were having a lot of employee turnovers and low productivity and all of those things. And the before and the after, there was like 85% of their employees had a very positive response. So initially they didn't want to talk about their problems, and they, because of the stigma and everything, right?
Yep.
And so
Correct.
this platform essentially uses an AI chatbot, and it uses normal language programming, and it's developed by professionals, mental health professionals themselves, and
Okay.
then it goes through a series of screening. So it's like clinically everything is in place, and it's 24/7, it's available. And so initially, earlier, what they were facing was like around $30 million of losses per year because of employee absenteeism and everything.
Right.
And that reduced significantly, and the employees were more open, and they did a basic screening of their anxiety symptoms and their depressive symptoms. Those are the main comorbidities with
Right.
that come with
Right.
stress.
Yes.
So yeah, so I mean that's also one of like some really great use case that I read about. So
Interesting. I mean, yeah, thanks, Vasundhara. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do know you're very excited about the whole wellness and the mental segment that we're taking. But yeah, you're right. And again, to bring back to the point that we were talking about hyper personalization
yeah,
and hyper personalization at a cost, which earlier, imagine if we had to do, we actually had to deploy mental health, we would have, if we needed experts to do that, what is the kind of cost that we were looking at? And now, of course, that does not mean we are, with due respect to all the work that professionals are doing, this can be a good starting point for somebody to just get used to the idea that, okay, I should try therapy, or maybe I should try talking to somebody, and that can bring about a lot of significant improvement in my mental wellness. So yes, of
And
course, I
also,
think
I
that.
think one of the key features is that the chatbot, at least, I mean, you can book therapy appointments, at least is available 24/7. So, I mean, the
Absolutely.
longer you wait, the worse your symptoms get, right?
Correct,
So, if you
correct,
just
right,
have
right.
somebody on that SOS basis, that's really helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely, no doubt about it. The availability and the more human-like connect that these solutions are bringing to us, I think they definitely add a lot of value to what ChatGPT brings on to them. I completely
So,
agree to
so
that.
my takeaway from this, it's not necessary always to implement AI solution for your processes or automate your process, but you know, if you can improve the well-being of your employees as well, that can drive your revenue upwards as well. So
Yeah.
Absolutely,
something great to know.
absolutely. So, like we said, right? While the customer is the king, there are a lot of internal stakeholders where,
Absolutely.
if we make life easy for them, or if we're bringing there's a drastic improvement in the quality of life for them, that is again a very, very useful business case for us. Yes, yes. So, thanks Vasundhara, for sharing that. I mean, in fact, I do know a lot of, I have heard about a couple of meditation apps which again help you with the kind of, there are cases when you type out what you're feeling and what is going on with you, and with the sentiment analysis that we're doing, that actually helps us. They There is a recommended uh, or a recommended type of music that you can listen to, which really calms your mind, and that's again another very interesting use case that we've seen, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
While we're talking about this, there's, I think, one area of generative AI use cases using, again, sentiment analysis, the natural language processing, which we've seen, is supporting the sales teams, right? We all know organizations run large sales teams. These sales teams have multiple meetings going on. There are so many interactions that the sales team is doing with their customers, with their with the other stakeholders, their partners. And at some point of time in the whole conversation, certain underlying nuances, or in the conversation, the undercurrent of the conversation kind of gets missed, or
Yes.
we are way too focused on the outcome that we kind of miss the underlying tones of the conversation. We have very, very effective, some of our partner portfolio companies are actually implementing this into their, for some sales organizations, wherein there is a sentiment analysis being done of the entire sales process, the conversations, the meetings that we are recording, to see that, was the customer feedback really positive? What did the customer pause? Did the customer think, I mean, was not really very impressed with what we were talking, or doesn't really seem convinced about our offerings? So these are the kind of inputs that the sales team can get using generative AI, and again using AI to be more specific, which does the analysis of sentiment, text which is being written, or the tone in which it is being spoken. And imagine the kind of insights a sales team would get having these kind of data points when they are reviewing the potential deal breaking, or very important deals that need to be closed. So that's also another very interesting case that we've seen about generative AI, which is positively impacting the sales processes.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that kind of brings us to the end of the use cases that we've seen. But I definitely would like to take a pause here. And Parag, remember we were talking about a lot of inhibitions that we've seen our
Correct.
customers bring onto
Correct.
the table every time we talk about generative AI, right? So do you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah. So it's been 2 years. I think Murli touched upon briefly in his discussion, and there's always a section of the crowd, or the audience, that feels ChatGPT is here to displace a human being in their jobs. What's your take on it? Because I'm a firm believer in the positive side of ChatGPT, and we've seen it in action. What's
Right,
your
right.
take and what's your opinion on this section?
So to that, I think, Parag, again, like I keep saying, we have friends of network science whom we keep reaching out to. We recently did a very interesting survey. International Labour Organization actually put out certain rules. I mean, they had put out a thought process on a thought on chat on generative AI, and what could be the impact on the labor industry overall. And I mean
Sure.
labor, not I mean white collar, blue collar, all of it. And we reached out to around, I mean, the survey kind of touched to around 2,500 odd net friends of network science, and the responses that we got were astounding. 75% of people who voted in this survey actually thought that generative AI it's a job creating powerhouse. And that was, it's such a powerful
Correct.
statement. It's such a power, a positive sentiment to leave with, because we are actually talking about people looking at businesses, looking at organizations, looking at power, at generative AI to create more jobs, as against the traditional or the initial fear that was brought in, that generative AI is going to make a lot of jobs redundant. And another very interesting fact that we've seen is, while at the beginning there was a thought process that generative AI is going to impact the grunt work, right? The repetitive
Yeah.
processes that will go, and all of that gets taken away. So that was the area which we thought is going to be most impacted by generative AI. However, the industry, we are having generative AI being largely used in the creative spaces more. So your
Yeah.
image creations, your voice creations, your music creation, creative industry is the one which is most is
Benefiting.
using generative AI the most. And the possibilities are endless for the kind of solutions that are coming up. We've started with content creation of images, static images. We started with text. We're now moving to images. We're now moving to video and avatar creation. Some very interesting use cases that we're working on is now creation of designs. So imagine you have architectural designs, product designs being now generated using AI. I mean, that's the kind of slow and steady change that we're seeing, and shift that we're seeing. So no, I don't think it's the grunt work that is being impacted. It is more of the creative areas that are getting impacted. I think what we should really be very optimistic about the fact that things which can be automated are getting automated in a much
Right.
better manner, a
Right.
more contextual manner, and that kind of leaves us with a lot of leeway to
Correct.
focus on the more important tasks at hands. And of course, like I said, we have so many we have a prompt engineer. That's the new kind of job profile that we're seeing, using based on chat on generative AI coming up. So yeah, there is I think the future is going to be very exciting, and I'm glad we are in the thick of things.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're on the brink of something great. And even today, this discussion, I think for me personally, it's opened up new possibilities. I think generative AI cuts across verticals, it cuts across personas that we talk to every day. And it's here, whether or not, and you have to accept it. And I'm sure that 75% would move to 100 very soon.
Right. Absolutely. So like the famous line goes, right? You can either hate it or you can like it, but you can't ignore it. So you
Ignore it.
have to, yeah. So I think that would be the best way to sum up the whole conversation, that there is no running away from generative AI, right?
Absolutely.
The 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 earlier we look at it, and the more we look at it from a very open mind and see what possibilities it brings for us, I think that's how we are that is going to be the best approach. And of course, we as network science are committed to doing this on behalf of our clients and on behalf of our portfolio companies. I have a couple of questions from the audience, but a few of them.
Sure, sure. That sounds
What do
good.
you say, Vasundhara?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can see a question which says by Anubhav, which is, what is the potential of products using Chat GPT APIs internally to generate content and help IT clients? I think we kind of covered it briefly when we spoke about generate content, right? We're talking about generative AI and the content which it is creating. text, be it images, be it video. So we can definitely talk about. Somehow I lost the question. Okay. So basically, what we're seeing is how using API, potential of products using ChatGPT as internally to generate content. Yes, when we talk about IT clients, we have IT clients who are generating a lot of their marketing content using generative AI. A lot of their, customized clientele outreach, which is happening, is being used, being done using generative AI, and the APIs with their existing internal systems are using these APIs through which connected to the generative AI. So yes, IT systems can IT organizations can use this for marketing purposes, like we discussed, the HR processes or any other routine processes which can be very automated are being done using can be done using the generative AI tools that we have in the market. We have another question from Bisham, which talks about how can generative AI be useful in sales. Parag, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah. So we touched upon it briefly. So me being in sales for most of my career as well, whether it's selling a small product or a very complex solution, people buy from people, right? I mean, you have to talk to people every day. What happens is, because you talk so much, you often end up missing on a lot of key points. Now, like you mentioned, the get probably through generative AI could be something that would really help individuals improve uh, and grow personally as well as professionally in their journey in sales as well. I think that's really important, and especially when we do bulk sales, right? When we're doing a lot of monotonous sales, even if it's calling, for example, or randomly. I think those insights would be really key. And the insights that we get from the customer is something that would help improve our pitch to the clients. And that is something that will definitely be helpful. And we've seen that in action with a couple of customers who already implemented it. And these are typically
Right.
very useful for large workforces as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Parag, for that. While of course we did thanks for covering the sentiment analysis part of it, and analysis of the meetings and all. There are a few other tools that we've seen are very very helpful in the sales domain. Is of course we are talking about AI enabled platforms, entire lead within a life cycle, right from the generation to the closure of the leads. Right, we've seen that we can have algorithms at all which can predict the success of a particular lead based on the persona that we're targeting or the
Correct.
kind of industry that we're targeting, whether these leads are being tracked or not. We have missed certain leads, if there's a life cycle that we need to follow for these leads. So in that case, in that sense, it kind of keeps all the entire sales funnel that we have. And while earlier all of this used to get done manually, we now
Correct.
have solutions which do it for us. So we have notifications being generated, alerts being generated that, listen, this lead has reached this point, has not been tackled. Do you want to look at it? So there are a lot of AI and generative AI enabled solutions. In fact, we have one of our portfolio solutions which is doing just that, which sits over and above your existing CRM and helps you in detail about when you reach out to a customer. Did the customer open your email? If they opened the email, how much time was spent on that particular email? Within that email, there is a particular segment that the customer client kind of found interesting. Very very interesting other portions would be if your client has actually forwarded that email to somebody else within their organization, and we wouldn't know that there are multiple more stakeholders that whom we need to reach out to before this particular deal can be closed. So these are kind of insights which tremendously would help a sales team to know that, okay, other than the stakeholders that I'm mailing and I'm talking to in my email, I do know there are a couple of other decision makers which I probably need to reach out. So that's where we can, the whole sales strategy and navigation can be slightly modified to include more people from the client organization. So yes, in that sense, sales is also another very very interesting domain which is getting kind of very aptly touched by generative AI. And while here we're talking about traditional sales, if we look at the feet on the street, the sales feet on the street that we have, there are again amazing AI enabled solutions which we have where them train better. You can know your organization better, know your own performance better. Like we have dashboards, they can log in, they can see what is their current performance, where they aspire to be, if they want to be in a certain place, what is the differential in the targets that they have to meet, how they can possibly meet those differential in the targets. There are predictive analysis, there is prediction, or there is suggestive mechanisms that we have built into these solutions, which can tell you how you can better your sales and how you can better your numbers, so on and so forth.
And
So
just reduce human error as much as possible.
absolutely, absolutely. Human error, and reduce the chances of turning blind eye to certain very important data sets. I think that is one of the keys that generative AI is bringing onto the table. That humanly we may be able to look at maybe 10 data points, 50 data points. Generative AI gives us the capability of any given point of time look at thousands of data points and connect the dots, which we obviously understand is one of the most important things for insights in any whichever domain or whichever industry we are in. So that's it from us. I don't think we have any more questions, but we do have certain polls that we would be publishing. So I request the audience to please take the polls and let us know more about how did you like the seminar today. Thanks, Vasundhara. It was an amazing conversation. Thanks, Parag, for being here.
Thank you, Trupti. Thanks,
Thank you,
Parag.
Trupti, for having us. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and I would love to thank the audience. Thank you so much for your participation here today.